Hello and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we talk about the situation of the suffering church around the world. Today it is my very great privilege to be speaking with Bishop Michael Lenihan, a Franciscan friar from Ireland who has been a missionary in Central America, specifically El Salvador, Guatemala and Honduras, for about 30 years. In 2011, Pope Benedict XVI nominated Bishop Michael to the new Diocese of La Ceiba. To tell us more about his life, his stories, it is my very great privilege to welcome His Excellency to our program. Your Excellency, thanks for being with us here today in our program.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the privilege of being here, and a very special hello to all our viewers this morning, or this night, yes.
Your Excellency, you were born in Mount Collins, Ireland, and Irish is close to your heart. Ireland is close to your heart. A question to you, you've packed off for the missions. You've been in the missions for almost 30 years?
28 years.
28
years, yeah.
Did you always have a missionary heart?
I did. Well, in Ireland, we had the Catholic schools. And when I was a little boy going to school, we had a lot of visits from the missionaries, from Africa, from Asia, from Central America, from all over the world. And we used to love to see them coming. They would talk to us about their missionary work and their work in schools, their work with the sick, and all the different work that a missionary does. So from a very early age, I think I had a missionary heart.
Was there one person who was decisive in your decision-making process for your vocation?
Yeah, there was. A Franciscan, Brother Patrick. In the old days, the Franciscans, they did what was called questing. That's a fancy name for begging. Yeah, they went around from store to store, from shop to shop, looking for sugar, for milk, for tea. In those days, the Franciscans were very, very poor. So I remember once I was working in Abbeyfield, which is the nearest town to me, and I saw this brother dressed in the brown habit, the rosaries, the sandals, and I was young, so this impressed me. Just the habit and the exterior. And what impressed me more was that he had a car which wasn't running very well. So the car stopped and wouldn't move, so we pushed the car. I got the car going. So that was my first contact with the Franciscans and with religious life.
And that's where you thought, that's what I'd like to be?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to be, exactly. That left a lasting impression in my mind. The figure of the Franciscan, the humility, the habit. The habit was very attractive.
Yes.
I've always loved the Franciscan habit, and I can still remember that moment when I saw it for the first time.
And you're a Franciscan today?
I'm a Franciscan, yes, yeah.
You have, as we've mentioned, you've been 30 years in Latin America. Question, your first port of call, if you will, was El Salvador.
El Salvador, yes.
And you left at about 1984, if I'm not mistaken, but the civil war, which was a brutal civil war, was already going on at that time, a civil war which at the end I think cost about 70,000 lives and was brutal in many, many regards. And my question to you is, your parents, they're seeing their third child going off to El Salvador, and they must have been panicked at the thought of you leaving in a time of such crisis.
It was difficult for the parents because at that time in Ireland there was a lot of immigration. My sister had already gone to the United States to work. My brother had gone to England, and then I have a younger brother, so he was the one who was at home. And if that younger brother didn't exist, maybe I would never have come. But I felt that he was going to look after my parents, so I decided to go to El Salvador. It was a difficult moment. I can still remember the day before I went, the goodbyes and the leaving for the airport and all like that. But that didn't deter me, yeah. They were lonesome scenes, but also very supportive. Prayerful moments, yeah, because my parents were very good Catholics.
Trusting in the Lord.
Trusting in the Lord, yeah. And they knew that the Lord would take care of me. My mother always watched the television, so she said, we'd be looking out for you on the television, because Salvador was very much in the news at that stage. Monsignor Romero had been killed in 1980, and so it was worldwide known that the war in Salvador was very widely known.
Now, why did you choose El Salvador?
Well, that's a good question. In Ireland, the Franciscans, our big mission was to Africa, and most of the Franciscans went to Africa to work. But in 1968, the Franciscans opened what is called the Mission to El Salvador. And it's very interesting how that began. During the Vatican Council here in Rome, there was a bishop in San Miguel in El Salvador. He was at the Vatican Council. And one day he saw a group of 40 Franciscans in St. Peter's Square. And this was back maybe in 1964, and he said to them, what are you doing here? And they said, we're Irish Franciscans, we're studying to be priests. He says, why don't you come to my diocese in El Salvador? I would love to have you. So they spoke to the provincial went out and saw the area, and the provincial decided this would be a good place for a mission.
Right.
So in 1968, shortly after the Second Vatican Council, the mission was opened in El Salvador. Now, the first came out in 1968, 4 or 5 Franciscans. Some of them didn't stay. They were frightened. It was a shock. And they came back to Ireland. But the majority stayed. And then right down through the years, up to 1982, 84, we still came out from Ireland.
But you made a decision to go to El Salvador, or were you sent?
No, it's voluntary.
It's voluntary.
Within the Franciscans, missionary work is voluntary. And St. Francis has that in his rule. If somebody wants to go among the Saracens, the infidels, go to the missions, he will ask the provincial, the superior, and his
free to
request
go.
will be taken into account. So we volunteer.
And you volunteered to go to such a difficult, but why such a difficult country?
Well, I had known the Franciscans who worked there as well. They also came home on holidays. When I was a student in the Franciscan order, they would come home and they would talk to us about the work in El Salvador. They would show slides. In the old days, before we had the modern equipment today, PowerPoint and all like that, they depended very much on the slides and photographs. And I was very impressed with the pastoral work and the life in El Salvador. And I think that seed was sown in my heart to be a missionary in El Salvador, in Central America.
What was your greatest shock when you arrived in the country?
Well, I suppose the culture shock. There were a lot of displaced people. So I came to San Francisco Gotera when I went to the beginning. It's a military town, a barracks of about 3,000 soldiers. And in the town, there were a lot of displaced people. 3 different communities of displaced people living in deplorable conditions, cardboard houses, no running water, very little food, lots of children, no hygiene, and that really was a culture shock in the beginning when I saw that reality.
I imagine. Yeah. What did you feel you could bring to the people?
Well, I suppose bring hope. There were a lot of programs. Trócaire from Ireland, the Red Cross, many people were distributing food, Caritas, to the people. So they had the basics, yeah. And I felt at that stage, I felt a little powerless. You do feel very powerless. And, you know, we come from a well-off country. Ireland in those days was fairly well-off. But at the same time, you feel very powerless. What can I do? So I said, all we can do is be a sign of hope, be a presence, and be with the people.
But it must have been shocking to be confronted. I mean, Ireland's had its troubles, and we know of the troubles and all of the, but to be confronted with such violence at a young age and seeing face to face man's inhumanity to men. And
it was a civil war, and a very bitter civil war, brother against brother. Very often from the same family, you had one young person who was with the guerrilla, you had one person who was with the soldiers, brother fighting brother. It was like the old days in Ireland, the civil war, where brother killed brother as well. So it was a difficult situation, but at the same time, you can't just allow this to get you too much, because otherwise you can't do anything. So initially you have the culture shock. You just say, I'm here and I want to work with the people, so be a presence, get to know the people, visit them, share with them, and listen to them basically, and be a presence for them.
Reconciliation afterwards. Today, El Salvador is a bit better situation. I mean, there are still challenges, of course. We know about the violent crime, the story with the maras, and these situations which are still very prevalent in society. Would you say that this violence is still an underlying channel, if you will, from the time of the war, or has the country been able to reconcile this brother against brother war?
Well, a lot of people ask, was it worth it, such a long war? 70,000 to 90,000 people killed, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of suffering. Was it worth it? And the interesting thing today is that more people die in Salvador today, every day, than during the Civil War. Oh. This is the amazing thing. You have more people who die daily. In those days, it was quite a lot, but even today. And that's because of the violence. You have what you call the maras, the pandillas, the groups, and
these criminal gangs.
Criminal gangs, yeah. They organised themselves, and I think the origin was it in the States, in Los Angeles, and
in the prisons, no?
The prisons, yeah. Yes. They brought it down to El Salvador. They organised themselves. It's a strange phenomenon, but there it is, and it does bring a lot of suffering. Young people who have nothing to do because of unemployment.
I was going to ask you, what are the roots? What are the roots of this seemingly intractable violence that exists in the country?
Yeah, well, you must remember as well that during the war there was a whole generation that it weren't allowed to study in the country areas. The schools were destroyed. So many young people grew up, in this atmosphere of war and hatred and violence. So I think that this was in their blood, this was in their lives, and this is carried on to the present day. That nowadays we blame the films that young people see, the war, the violence, that they become affected by, contaminated by this. In a sense, the young people became contaminated by the war, by the violence, and it's perpetuated in these groups in El Salvador and in other countries in Central America.
You were in El Salvador for 16 years, and in the year 2000 you moved to Honduras. What was the reason for your move to Honduras?
Well, when I came out to El Salvador in 1984, we were still missionaries. And then about 1987, we became part of the Franciscan province of Central America. We became legal members. That means we belonged to the province and we were under the provincial of Central America. That means that he could change us from one country to the other.
What was the contrast? El Salvador, Honduras. It must have been like night and day in many regards.
Well, yeah,
first peaceful environment.
Yeah, yes. The Hondurans, they're laid back. The Salvadorians, it's a small country, a huge population, and they're hard workers. So you have a small territory. You go to Honduras, it's a huge territory, plenty of land, and the people wouldn't have the same drive as the Salvadorians has. They say that in Salvador, the people pushed you to work. In Honduras, you push the people a little bit to work, yeah. So maybe that's not fair, but that's the general impression that we have. Honduras never really had a war. It doesn't have a leftist political party, so it was very serene country, a lot of tranquility and a lot of peace. So it was a different setup to El Salvador.
So, Your Excellency, what different challenges then does the Church face in Honduras than what you confronted in El Salvador?
Well, the culture is the same in Honduras as in Salvador. The language is the same, and to an extent as well, the popular piety. In Honduras, the same as in El Salvador, you have a lot of Catholics. 80% are Catholic, but a lot of them would be lapsed Catholics. They don't go to the church. So when we talk about Salvador or Honduras as a missionary country, it's not a missionary country in the sense that the people are not baptized.
So it's not primary. It's not primary evangelization.
No, it's not primary. No, the people are already baptized. They made the first communion. They've been confirmed. So there's a Christian atmosphere. So you're living in a very Christian atmosphere. But maybe of the 80% who are Catholics, maybe 10% go to church regularly, 10 to 15%. So you have to try and draw those people. So you have to re-evangelize these people.
It's almost more difficult.
It is in a sense, yeah.
Why? Yeah. Is it simply ambivalence, or what is the reason that there's, if you will, this lack of activity or movement on the part of the people in their faith?
Well, I suppose there's an indifference, really. They're just indifferent to their faith, yeah, that they feel that being Christian is having the sacraments, but being a committed Christian every day and going to church every day or every week, that's not part of their life, only for about 10% of the people.
How would you shake them up?
Through evangelization, through different projects that we have, we have a lot of lay people. That's the striking thing of the church in Latin America, in Salvador and in Honduras, the work of the lay people in the church. You really have a tremendous spirit. Lay people, committed lay people. There might be parents, there might be single people, young people, but they have a great love for the church. They work as catechists, and they don't receive any salary. They give hours and hours of their time to the church every day, every week, and it's wonderful to see that generosity. So through them, we try and get to the people, the committed people to the uncommitted people.
It says that there are two things that unite the Honduran people. One is football, and the other is Our Lady of Suyapa. Can you tell us a little bit about the role and the importance of Our Lady of Suyapa to the Honduran people?
Yes. Well, people in Honduras are fanatics with regard to the football, soccer, especially the women, the ladies.
Really?
Yeah, they're fanatics, yes.
Oh,
and,
I would have thought it would have been the other side.
Yeah, no, the ladies are very fanatical, but it's good for them. It brings them together. The football has that. Yeah, Our Lady of Suyapa. Our Lady of Suyapa is a little statue, tiny, very, very small. And this was discovered one day. This man was going home from work, a campesino, a countryman, and he was late, so he decided to sleep outside. And he was just lying down on the ground, and he felt something on his back.
Right.
And he continued to try and sleep, but this was under his back and was uncomfortable. Yeah. So he decided, I'm going to investigate. And he got up, and he found this small little statue under his back. And this is actually Our Lady of Suyapa. Then this was brought to the little chapel and was placed in the chapel, the small little chapel of Suyapa. And then later years, they have built a huge basilica.
Because miracles started to occur around the statue. Or
That's
how?
right. Well, like any Marian shrine, you have people who go, you have the pilgrimages, yeah, you have the people who go, the lame, the sick, all the people who are sick in body or spirit, they all go. So obviously there were some miracles, yeah. Maybe not great miracles of people trying to wear their crutches, but there were, Our Lady works in her own way, doing the will of God in healing people. So then they built this huge basilica, and they put the statue into a beautiful gold frame, yeah, which is Our Lady of Suyapa. And the feast day is the 3rd of February every year. So people come from all over the country. It's a huge day, and not only do they come from all over the country, they come from all over the world to visit the shrine of Our Lady of Suyapa.
In Latin America, I don't know how it is in Honduras, but for a while the popular pieties, if you will, the rosary, the processions, they were a bit marginalized in favor of more intellectual, more rational approach, if you will. Is this coming back now? Is the popular piety coming back, or how do you find that balance?
Yeah, well, in Salvador, the popular piety is very, very strong. Very, very strong. And this is my conclusion. I know I don't hope I'm not unfair to the charismatic movement. When the charismatic movement became very, very strong in the church, they had their prayer meetings, and I think they marginalized a little bit the popular piety, the rosary and the processions, and a very important part was reading the Bible, praying together, but less of the popular piety. But I think that has come back again. So when charismatic renewal has gone down a little bit as well, so there is a return to the popular piety. You know, we say that these countries are Christian countries. Yes. They're also Marian countries. They love Our Lady. So the processions in honor of Our Lady, both in Honduras and in Salvador, they're huge events, and a lot of people. So that's another thing, yeah, you know, you get the impression at times when you have these big celebrations in Honduras and Salvador, these are wonderful Catholic people, but it's just a day, and then afterwards there's nothing. Yeah, they all go out. It's like in Holy Week, you know, the thousands and thousands of people who follow the processions during Holy Week and the burial of Christ, and yet it comes to Easter Sunday when we celebrate the risen Christ. There wouldn't be 1/10 of the people present. Right. So they seem to have a love as well for death and for crucifixion and for suffering, for Calvary, and they love that type of spirituality. But when it comes to believing in Christ, the risen Christ,
resurrection.
Yeah, the resurrection, you would have less people present in these ceremonies.
So catechism is a big challenge.
Catechism is a big challenge, yeah, to educate the people, yeah.
You were nominated in 2011 by Pope Benedict to be the new bishop of the new diocese of La Ceiba in Honduras. What did you think when you got the news?
Well, first of all, I was living in Guatemala. I'd been out of Honduras for 3 years. So I never, in my wildest dreams, I never thought that I would be called back to Honduras. Because when I left Honduras in 2009, go to Guatemala, I said, I'll probably never again come back to Honduras. I'll go to Guatemala, maybe I'll go to work in Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, just to get to know the other countries. But never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I would come back to Honduras.
Did you want to say no?
Well, I was called to the nuncio's office in Tegucigalpa on the 20th of December, and the nuncio walked into the room, and with the introduction he said to me, Your Holy Father has appointed you Bishop of La Ceiba. I almost fell off the chair. I almost fell off the chair. And I said to him, I said, Monsignor, I need some time to reflect on this. And he said to me, what do you need more time for to reflect on this? He said, you're almost 30 years in Central America. You're 60 years of age. Make up your mind now. What more time do you need to reflect? So I said, well, if this is for the good of the church and for the good of Central America, I'll accept. I'll say yes.
Your brother Anthony said at your Episcopal ordination, and I'd like to quote here, he said, I could not stop thinking of my parents and all that they had done for him when he was studying for the priesthood. What sacrifices did your parents make to enable you to fulfill your vocation?
Well, as I said, there was a lot of immigration in our time in Ireland. There was a lot of poverty. I mean, Ireland became wealthy after it became the Celtic Tiger. In those days, we weren't the Celtic Tiger, we were a poor nation. Similar maybe to El Salvador and Honduras, come back in 1950, 1960. The bad roads, lack of running water, lack of electricity, and there was a lot of poverty. So as I said, my younger brother was the only one at home, and you know, maybe my parents would have liked if I stayed on and studied and worked and helped them, but they were generous. They said, no, if this is what you want to do, do it, and we'll be fine.
Were your parents there at your ordination, at your Episcopal ordination?
No, they weren't, no. My parents died, my father died back in 91 and my mother in 97. So, but I'm sure they were watching from heaven, looking down from heaven.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And also the people of Mount Collins and Limerick, West Limerick, they've supported you as well throughout these years. I understand many a dance has been held in your name, in your honour, and money gathered and sent for your projects.
Yes,
They've really carried you, these people.
Oh, they have, yeah. Mount Collins is my parish, which isn't my parish. We're the last house in Abbeyfield. And Abbeyfield Church is 7 miles away, so Mount Collins is 1.5 miles. We always went to Mount Collins. Even though I was baptised, made my first communion, confirmed in Abbeyfield, my parish has always been Mount Collins. And we were joking about that when I was at home on holidays. Now, my first visit as a bishop, I went to Abbeyfield and they were saying, you know, I think we'll just have to knock down that fence and you'll go right over into Mount Collins. There'll be more, because they were claiming me Abbeyfield, Mount Collins would claim me. Which parish does he belong to?
They want you as their son.
Well, yes, their son, yeah. They were very proud, I think, the very fact that there was a bishop from that area. But anyway, the people have been marvellous, really, down through the years. They've been very, very supportive in their prayer. And when I've gone home, I've always visited the parishes. I've said Mass with them. They have arranged dances. They have collected money. They make collections when I'm out here, and they send money out. Yeah. So they've been very, very good, extremely good.
Would you call, or do you call Ireland home, or do you call Honduras home?
Well, I love to go on holidays to Ireland, but I would call Honduras now my home. I've been saying to the people, Salvador was my first love, Honduras was my second love, Guatemala was my third love, and now I'm back in Honduras. It's not my fourth love, it's my eternal love. It's like the Spanish song, Amor Eterno, so it's my eternal love. So I could say my home is, my first home is, yeah, Honduras, and my second home would be Ireland.
Your new Diocese of La Ceiba is 400,000 Catholics out of about a total population of about 600,000, if I'm not mistaken, for which you have about 22 priests.
Yes.
Do you still need missionary priests coming to Honduras, or is it something that you're working to try and find local vocations?
Well, both, yeah. We need missionaries, yeah. In general, Honduras depends very much on missionary priests. 65% of clergy in Honduras are missionary. Foreign priests, 35% are local clergy. And in the diocese, I have 6 Honduran priests. So it's a big challenge for me to form native clergy. And that's the hope. And another thing, all the bishops in Honduras, we're all religious and most of us are foreigners. There's no diocesan priest who has become a bishop. So very often the diocesan priests, they feel bad. You know, we've been living as church for so many years and we still don't one of our own bishops. So there is a great need to promote native vocations. And of course, I do need missionary priests. I would love in the morning if 6 or 8 more priests came, because we've 11 parishes. There could be 22 parishes if we had enough priests. We could divide them into each of the parishes.
We'll call on more Irish missionaries for you.
Yes, yeah, but they're not there, unfortunately.
Yes.
They're a dying race.
There's a dying breed, no?
Yes, yeah.
What would you say are your greatest needs in your diocese, if you were to make an appeal to those with us on our program?
Well, I suppose one of our greatest needs always is the spiritual need, the need of prayer. Prayerful support, spiritual support, to pray for our mission, to pray for the bishop, pray for the diocese, pray for all the people, pray for evangelization. But then there are a lot of material needs as well. For instance, when I was ordained, there was no building big enough for the ordination. The cathedral holds 700 people. The biggest building is a gymnasium for 2,000 people. There were 8,000 people at the ordination. We had it in a stadium. Yeah, so we do need one big building, a
like
gymnasium,
a pastoral centre,
pastoral centre, yeah, for about 5,000 people, 6,000 people, to be able to bring together all the people of the diocese. We've had very big meetings. We had a catechist meeting from our diocese, the Diocese of St. Peter, 3,000 people. There was no room for them. They were just squashed in one big room. We were perspiring 6, 8 hours together.
Yes.
With meetings. So we have a big need for we have a need for a big building, a pastoral centre in the diocese. And of course we have the catechists, we have the delegates of the word,
right.
Which is a ministry which started in Honduras, where you have these lay people who go out every Sunday to the rural areas and they celebrate the word.
Right.
They maintain the faith alive in the rural areas.
Where the priest
cannot go every Sunday, maybe once a month, once every 2 months, and they keep the faith alive in these areas during the week and during the months that the priest cannot be there. So we need the training of them, the training of catechists. We have a Catholic school which is falling down. We need to rebuild it, maybe change it, and so there are many, many needs.
It sounds like you've got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we have the sick, we have the poor people. If you try and help the sick and the poor, we have dispensaries, we have clinics, because the health system in Honduras isn't great. So people depend on the church dispensaries or clinics for health, for medicine, and all like that. So there are many, many needs that we have in the diocese.
Your Excellency, thank you for being with us today in our program.
Yeah, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure and a great joy being in this program. And once again, a very special hello to all the people who've been listening to us and with us during this time. May God bless you all.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today in our program. You've heard the story, you've heard the witness of His Excellency Bishop Michael Lenihan and his work in the new Diocese of La Ceiba in Honduras. If you'd like to know more, if you'd like to know how you can help, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.